out there on YouTube. Welcome to the Eugene Torto YouTube channel. If you've been following, welcome back. If you're a subscriber, welcome back. And if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe and hit the like button or the thumbs up button or the thumbs down button. Hit the notification bell if you subscribe. This way you'll know when my updated videos on this long ongoing transmission rebuild finally finishes up. I'm going to try and get some work done on it today. I'm going to prime the torque converter and put it on the trans. Get the trans out of that little yellow wagon so I can get this yellow wagon out of the way. Get it at least slid under the car, and maybe I'll see about trying to get it up. Anyone that's been following knows that when I took this out, I got the car as high as I'm daring to go on the jack stands, but the transmission bell housing barely clears the bottom of the car, and then once I get it out of there, I got to work it up onto the jack somehow. I have a transmission jack under there, so I'll have that floor jack. So I don't know, I'll get it up there somehow. If not, I'll have to contact my neighbor and see if he can come over and give me a hand getting it onto the transmission jack, which is probably the smart thing to do. Anyone who isn't familiar with this transmission rebuild and what's going on with that torque converter, that's the old torque converter, that blue. If you want to see what's going on with that, I will try and provide a link up above or a link down in the descriptions box. But for now, I'm just going to try and get this thing primed and the torque converter on, and then I'll work on getting that out of the wagon. See if I can find a good place to put this camera, and we'll get to work. Okay, if anyone is interested, I'm going to use Valvoline's full synthetic transmission fluid. It's backward compatible with the older transmissions, GM transmissions. The reason I'm using the Valvoline with purchasing it online with the in-store pickup at Advance Auto, I got a discount. Plus, it was one of the lower price full synthetics, and I really wanted to put the high-end synthetics in there, but this is the first time I'm rebuilding a transmission. If something goes wrong and I got to drain all that oil out and throw it away, yeah, it's a waste of a lot of money. So this is a way of saving money, yet still using full synthetic. So I'm gonna put some oil in here. I'll probably put whoa, there it goes. Leads down slow. I guess I'm gonna have to feed this real slow. I'll probably put about half a gallon in here. It should take 11 quarts total to fill the transmission once it's installed in the car. I'll fill the transmission the rest of the transmission once I get it in the car. And I'm going to prime the torque converter so it doesn't have to completely fill with fluid once the first time the transmission is the car is started up with the transmission in it. Pump starts flowing. So, this should do it. Gonna have to go real slow. That's all there is to it. Really slow. Sure, there might be a better way to do this. If there's any better way of doing this, someone please leave a comment in the comment below for other viewers so they know. Let me see if I can get some of the air out of there. Yep, there we go. A little bit more. Definitely a little bit more. Once I get the transmission in, I'll go ahead and install the Mr. Gasket chrome transmission pan on. For now, I have the stock one just bolted on there, 4 bolts. I'll completely bolt the other one on once it's under the car and I have the TV cable installed. This way I can see that the cable is properly installed and everything. That was a recommendation I seen online from one of the transmission builders, so I think I'll follow his recommendation. Boy, it's taking a long time to bleed down. If anyone is interested, this is a 2200 RPM stalled torque converter from Edge Racing Torque Converters. Let me see if I got something on the box here. I don't know if you can see that. There it is. EdgeRacingConverters.com. I'll leave links where I got my rebuild kit and the torque converter from. I actually ordered the torque converter with the kit from the same website, which is Pro-Built Automatic Transmissions. He's out there in California, specializes in these types of automatic transmissions, 700Rs and 4L60Es and 460Es and whatnot. And I believe I followed the instructions rebuilding that trans. Like I said, it's the first time I rebuilt the trans. You can go back in my other videos if you want to see how that went. And at some point I'll do like a review, a complete review of all the problems I ran into and doing the first time rebuild. Okay, I hope you guys can see this good. I'm going to lubricate the input shaft. No good. I think that did it. Already glued the seal when I installed it. And I should do that. Kick the torque converter on. It went in 3 times. That's what I believe it's supposed to go. It's turning all nice, which is always a good thing. I do have to put grease on the where this protrudes out. That'll go into the crankshaft, the rear of the crankshaft on the car. Hopefully you can see that. See if I can get the camera. And this is just like the input shaft on a manual transmission. Even though this won't be spinning inside the crankshaft like on a manual transmission, this has to fit tightly. And you have the big mistake people do is when they install these, they don't put grease on that end of the torque converter. So this is all the way in. There was 3 clicks going in, and I'll probably measure it just to be safe. I believe it's an inch if I put a straight bar across there. See, I got a straight bar laying around. One straight bar. I'll just whip out my cheesy plastic dial calipers, vernier calipers. Let's see. There we go, 1 inch exactly, just the way it's supposed to be. So I know that torque converter is seated all the way in like it's supposed to be. Okay, the trans is out and on the floor, and I'm going to have to maneuver it underneath the car. Anyone who hasn't been following the channel knows that I picked up a new Flexplate for it. I will leave links in the description box below where I got this stuff, which is Summit Racing, I believe. And I also picked up ARP bolts to go with the Flexplate. That's already installed while I was under there, and I had the old Flexplate out. I went and installed a new rear main seal. And what's nice about this Flexplate is it comes with a decal for the toolbox. That, and it's SSI approved. I don't need an SFI chromoly steel approved Flexplate, but I figured if I'm going to put a new Flexplate on it, I might as well get one that's SSI approved. At least I know it's approved for something. Basically, the difference is, like this Flexplate here actually came with the Eagle rotating assembly, and this is an externally balanced 3D3. That's what's in my car. I built that, I don't know, some years back. I got about 30,000 miles on it. And the reason I decided to replace the Flexplate, like this is a good Flexplate from Eagle. It's a little bit thicker than the factory one, which is one of the reasons they include it, is because the factory one will crack, won't hold up to a 383 stroker. But one of the reasons I decided to replace this is, one of the things I discovered when taking the trans out was a lot of the bolts were starting to work loose on the bell housing, and I was experiencing a vibration around the 3,000 RPM range, I believe it was, and I think it's because of the bell housing bolts coming loose, and I was probably making this Flexplate flex more than it's designed to flex. So, figure spend the extra money. I think it was, I think it was like $70. So, like I said, I'll leave a link in the description. And so I think it was worth it. The PRW Flexplate is actually thicker than the. I didn't actually measure it, but visually it's thicker than the Eagle Flexplate. And is a SFI chromoly steel Flexplate. Now, when they say chromoly steel, not 100% sure if they're just talking about the ring gear being 100% chromoly or the entire Flexplate. Because Flexplates usually, that I know of, always have the ring gear welded on, just like this one here. So, I'll get to sliding that trans under there and see how I'm going to get that up on the trans jack, or how that's going to go. Crawl under there real quick and I'll show you the Flexplate. What I did under there. There we go. Here's the Flexplate. Comes anodized gold. It seems like a nice one. It has a sticker on it. Tells you which way to mount it, and that it's SFI approved, and a little card stating that it's SFI approved. And I went and undercoated the, I don't know if you can see that good, the transmission tunnel. It's got some 3M underbody rubber undercoating. Gave it a couple of quick blasts, cleaned it up, gave it a couple of quick blasts. So that should help with a little bit with noise and heat, I hope, not much. I was going to spend a lot of money on heat insulation and all that, and I just said, the truth is, I never really had too much a problem with heat, even with these rusty headers, ceramic-coated headers that are rusted. That's another subject. I'm debating whether to take them off and have them recoated or just repaint them. I don't want to spend $500 right now after spending all this money rebuilding the trans, so I don't know. I'll have to think about that. Maybe I'll save that till next year. I should get another year out of them before I definitely have to recoat them or something. But anyway, let's get them sliding the trans over. Okay, I got the transmission onto the transmission jack via removing the driver's side wheel and using an engine lift and some finagling and my other floor jack, and I managed to get it all the way up on top of that jack and into position. I got 2 bolts started, which I got to finish running down. And I need to, basically I need to get all the bell housing bolts in and then the torque converter bolted up. I have to, before I bolt that torque converter up, I got to measure the distance between the torque converter and the Flexplate. I'll do that after I get the bell housing all torqued down and bolts in place. Because that has to be a certain distance from the Flexplate. If it's too far back and you pull the torque converter forward and bolt it, it will disengage the pump and the transmission's not going to work. So I have to make sure I get the correct distance. If it's too much distance, then I have to add washers. And this way the torque converter sits back far enough to engage the pump. But right now I just want to get the transmission cooler lines hooked up. Then I'll go ahead and finish the bell housing bolts. And I'll get back to you in a little bit when I get that done. Okay, this is where I'm at. I have the transmission lines hooked up. I have all the bell housing bolts bolted up. I still need to bolt the torque converter up to the Flexplate. And I still need to hook up like the C-beam and the drive shaft and the new chrome transmission pan with the drain plug in it. And then the transmission part of this will be done. I'll just have to wait till I finish rebuilding my engine's harness before I can start it and test the transmission. But for now, I'm calling it a day. Everybody have a happy YouTube day, and God bless.